Hey there, guys. This is Cole. Welcome back to another horror movie franchise ranking for October. Today's horror movie franchise, since I recently did Evil Dead, the next horror movie franchise I'll be doing a ranking of is the Chucky, aka the Child's Play movies. Now, this is a horror franchise that I really like the first four movies too, but this franchise definitely has its ups and downs, which we'll get to, but overall, this is a pretty solid horror movie franchise with an iconic character. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into my ranking. Coming in at number 8, I mean, this honestly should not be a surprise to anyone. I mean, I see this movie at the bottom of most people's ranking, and that, of course, is the 2004 movie Seed of Chucky. I have never liked this movie. Now, I will say, I do really like Bride of Chucky, which we will get to, but the reason I think Bride of Chucky works, I think that movie had the perfect balance of horror and comedy. This movie, on the other hand, I think this movie goes way too far with its comedic elements. I don't really find the comedy that funny. I mean, minus the exception of one scene where Chucky is yelling at Tiffany and Glenn/Glenda. I think that scene at the end is kind of funny. And Brad Dourif does do a solid voice performance as Chucky, but other than those two qualities, Seed of Chucky is an absolute garbage fest. I do not like the whole idea where it's a movie where Chucky gets pregnant, like the Tiffany doll gets pregnant. I'm like, okay, this is stupid. Now granted, I understand that the doll, Chucky and Tiffany, I get that they're a couple, but the whole idea of them having a kid is stupid because they're dolls. Like, that's just physically not possible. And Glenn, I just think, is a really annoying character, you know? Like, I do not like the design of the doll. And just, yeah, this right here began the downfall of this franchise, and many people would say, and I definitely agree with that. And it easily comes in at number 8. Coming in at number 7 is going to be a movie that's not quite as bad, but still a movie I'm not a big fan of, and that is the 2017 movie Cult of Chucky. Now, I do think this movie does have some good elements to it. I mean, I do like the idea and concept of a Chucky movie set entirely at a mental asylum. I do think that is an idea and concept that could have worked. And I do think that Fiona Dourif, Brad Dourif's daughter, does give a rather solid performance in the movie. But my main problem with this movie is I just think the movie's really boring, you know? I don't really think the movie takes full advantage of its setting. I think that a lot of the CGI is really bad in the movie, and I just don't really care for this movie. I didn't care for it when I saw it 8 years ago, and I still don't care for it now. I'm gonna give this movie a 3 out of 10. Coming in at number 6, and I know this is a bit of a hot take because I do know there are quite a bit of Chucky fans who do like this movie, but I'm not the biggest fan of it, and that is the 2013 movie Seed of Chucky. No, not Seed of Chucky. Although I'm not a fan of that movie, but I just covered it. Coming in at number 6 is going to be Curse of Chucky. Now, this movie was directed by Don Mancini, the franchise creator, who prior to this had directed the god-awful Seed of Chucky. And while this movie is nowhere near as bad as Seed of Chucky, I'm just personally not a big fan of it. But this movie does have its good qualities. I do think that Fiona Dourif is rather good in the movie. The whole idea of a Chucky movie set in a house could have worked. There is some okay production design for a direct-to-video movie. And Brad Dourif does give a solid voice performance as Chucky. And this movie at least tries to go back to the horror roots, but unfortunately, I don't think the movie is executed very well. I think the movie's rather boring and I've just never really cared for this movie. I'll give it a 4.5 out of 10. Now, coming in at number 5, from here on up, I do like the rest of these movies. And I know this choice I have at number 5, people are going to be like, really? You like this movie but not Curse of Chucky? Yeah, it's my opinion. Get over it. And coming in at number 5 for me, this is the only one I don't have on DVD, and that is the Child's Play remake from 2019. Now, I don't think this movie's perfect. You know, it's definitely not a candle on the original movie or the first 4 movies, but I thought this was a solid horror remake. I like how this movie It took the basic idea and premise of the original movie, but it also did something very unique and different with it, which is what I think every good remake should do. I like the whole idea and concept about Chucky being an AI robot. I think that's a rather interesting concept. And I do think that Mark Hamill does do a good job as the voice of Chucky. And I do think the kid actor who played Andy did do a good job in the movie. The only reason it's not ranked higher on the list, there are a couple of things that do hold it back. I do think that, I forget her name, but I think the actress who played Andy's mom, I do think she was kind of, Aubrey Plaza, I do think she was kind of a little miscasted here. There is some bad CGI moments in some scenes, and Andy, while Andy is a likable character, I don't think his friends are as likable in the movie. But other than that, I thought Child's Play 2019 was a solid horror remake. And again, it's not perfect. It has its flaws, but I liked the movie for what it is, and I would not mind revisiting this at some point in the future. And I'm going to give Child's Play 2019 a 7 out of 10. Coming in at number 4 for me is going to be a movie that I know a lot of people don't like. It's near the bottom of their ranking, but I personally don't understand why, and that is the 1991 movie Child's Play 3. Now, yes, this is not as good as the first two movies, and you can tell that they did rush to production, but I really like this movie. I like the whole idea of where the movie only came out a year after the second movie, but I like the whole story to it, where it takes place about 5 or 6 years after the events of Child's Play 2, where Andy's much older now, but because nobody believes him about the Chucky doll coming to life, Andy is sent to military school, and Chucky is trying to hunt down Andy Barkley at military school. I thought that was a rather interesting concept. The only reason this isn't ranked higher on the list, most of the effects do hold up, but there is some CGI bits that don't age the best, and again, this movie just isn't as good as the first two, but I still really like this movie, and I'm going to give Child's Play 3 an 8 out of 10. Coming in at number 4 for me is going to be the 1998 movie Bride of Chucky. Now, this I really like. I like how this movie is like a horror comedy. I think that the horror elements work really well, but I also think that the comedic elements work really well too. Once again, Brad Dourif is really good as the voice of Chucky, and I do like the addition of this new character, Tiffany. I think that Tiffany, voiced by Jennifer Tilly, is a rather funny character. The only reason this isn't ranked higher on the list is I'm just not a big fan of the way this movie ends. I think it's way too abrupt, but other than that, Bride of Chucky, great movie, and it gets a 9 out of 10. Coming in at number 2 is actually going to be the movie that kicked off this whole franchise, and that is Child's Play from 1988. Now, do not get me wrong, this movie is a horror classic, and when this movie was released in 1988, when this movie released in 1988, it was a big hit at the box office, and I will say, it did receive positive reviews from critics and audiences, and most people would tell you this is the best in the franchise, which I can see why. It's just not my personal favorite for reasons we're going to get to, but I think that this is still a great horror classic that holds up. And I do like the story to this movie, where in this movie, there is a serial killer by the name of Charles Lee Ray, played by Brad Dourif, who transfers his soul into this 2-foot-tall Chucky doll, or a good guy doll, and this 6-year-old kid, Andy Barkley, gets the doll for his birthday. However, the Chucky doll comes to life, and the Chucky doll is trying to find a way to transfer his soul into the little boy, and his mother, Karen, and a police detective, Detective Mike Norris, played by Chris Sarandon, basically have to protect the boy. And that right there is a rather interesting concept for a horror movie. And just, yeah, this is a really good horror classic. I rewatched it recently. It still holds up really well. And I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. But for me, coming in at number 1 is going to be Child's Play 2 from 1990. Now, I think not only is this one of my favorite horror movies, I would put this in my top 100 favorite movies of all time in general. I really like the story to this movie. I thought that this movie was a very good way to continue the story after the first Child's Play movie, where at the beginning of this movie there are some people working on a good guy doll trying to repair it, and then Chucky's soul is in the doll, and the Chucky doll basically escapes the laboratory, and Andy Barclay, who moved out of his apartment, now moves into an apartment with a new couple. And the Chucky doll finds out about this, and Chucky, voiced by Brad Dourif, the bad guy, is once again after Andy Barclay. I thought that was a great way to continue the story. I think that the horror elements work really well in this movie, but I also think that this movie does have a good sense of dark humor. And I do think that of all the Child's Play movies, this does have the best ending, where Andy Barclay manages to defeat Chucky in a toy factory, and then Chucky explodes at the end. But yeah, Child's Play 2, really good horror sequel, and in my opinion, easily the best movie in this franchise, and I'm going to give Child's Play 2 a 9 out of 10. So yeah, anyways guys, that was my ranking of the Child's Play franchise. Share your ranking in the comment section down below, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye now.